Hey, True Believers, Chris Mack coming at you with another weekend figure review. Today we are going over the DC Essentials Batgirl. Now, before we get into the review, I do want to apologize. There was some maintenance and some shenanigans that happened that caused me to have to take down the channel originally. So that's why when you come down, you see 0 subscribers. Well, it was something that just could not be helped. So if you guys were subscribed, I apologize for having to do that, but it couldn't be helped, as I just said. Now, if you're new here, if you wouldn't mind hitting subscribe, we definitely appreciate it because it helps the club channel more than you know. And we also love to hear your feedback and to just have a dialogue with everybody down in the comments below or on our social media pages, which I will make sure to leave the links down in the description below. So as we see here, we get this beautiful looking Batgirl. Now, I was initially going to get the McFarlane's DC Multiverse version because that Batgirl is the one that is post Burnside, which I'm so glad that that is over with. But it also harkens to Sean Gordon Murphy's Batgirl as well. But the reason I went ahead and chose this one, which is the new 52 outfit, was because this uniform takes a lot of elements of Bab's original Batgirl comics from the Silver Age, like her different designs of her suit. So that's what kind of turned me on to this one. And as you see here, you get a beautiful look of Batgirl here on the front of the window. It says Batgirl here. And then what's funny is you can't really see it here, but there's 3 holes. And I always say it's like, do the figures need to breathe? Anyway, you flip it around here to the back and you see all the figures that you need from this line. So I will make sure to pause it so where you guys can look at all the figures from this line and see which ones you want to pick up. And then you flip it around here to this side, and what I love is it's a great silhouette. You know, it says DC Essentials Batgirl, DC Collectibles there. But what I like about it is you see the outline of the cape here on the sides. Is it reminds me of those old Apple iPod commercials. So it's kind of like she's rocking out, you know what I mean? And then you flip it back around here, see Barbara again. You flip it down to the top here, you see that wonderful looking Bat Family Bat logo. And then you flip it here to the bottom, all the legal stuff, you know, who cares? But what we do care about is this figure awesome or not? So what say you, True Believers? Shall we open this packaging and see how cool Barbara is? I say, let's. And here's Batgirl out of the packaging. And as you can see, she just looks absolutely astounding. I love the way she poses, but there are problems with this figure that we will go over. But overall, in terms of the sculpting, I like the way she looks. And we'll get further in that here in a minute. But I just wanted to show off that this Batgirl looks very much like the original Batgirl, minus the colors, of course, and, you know, the upgraded look into the armor, which we'll get into in a moment. But I love the boots. Just, I don't know, to me, this screams Batgirl, and I absolutely love the way she looks here. I love the accessories she comes with, and just overall, I'm very much satisfied with my purchase here. So I hope that you guys enjoy it too. So let's go ahead and take her off the stand and get a further look at some of the problems this character has and, of course, the pros of why you want this in your collection. So a little backstory on our Barbara Gordon before we go any further is her first appearance was Detective Comics 359. And that's where the design that I'm talking about came from. Now, if you can kind of see it really a lot in the boots, in the way that her hair flows out of her cowl, that's very much Batgirl, and the gloves are kind of akin to her original uniform as well. Now, what happens with Barbara, for those of you that are kind of new to comics or don't know the whole story of Batgirl, is in the original continuity, Alan Moore took over the book and wrote a story with Brian Bolland, who did the art, called Batman the Killing Joke. And they just recently made a movie of it. And when they get into the killing joke part, that movie is good. But they try to do this whole, I think it's like 45 minutes before that kicks in, and it's really, really boring. So if you're not much of a reader and you want to check out the movie, I highly suggest checking that out. And what happens is the Joker shoots her in the spine, and it paralyzes her. And Joker does it to try to drive James Gordon mad. Now, through a majority of the regular continuity after that, she is known as as kind of like the behind the scenes hero called Oracle, because she's like a super hacker. That's why a lot of shows like Beware the Batman, etc., so forth, always call her Oracle for that reason. And when they decided to reboot the continuity into the New 52, which, as I said, this is the design, they said that Barbara found this miracle cure that her and her dad, which is Commissioner Gordon, took a chance on, and she was able to walk again. And so when they took off with the New 52, that's why you see here, which we'll get into, why Barbara has kind of more this heavier plated armor, which I think looks really nice. But the reason that she did this is because even though she could walk, she had a lot of PTSD about, you know, what if she gets punched, kicked, or falls from something? She's afraid that she was going to rupture her spine again. And so that's why, again, you get this kind of heavy plated stuff. And I like the way they sculpted it, like where you'd see where the abs are supposed to be. You kind of get that layered armor there, the Kevlar. And the same thing on the arms, you get the arm plates here. And then I don't know if this is just supposed to be metal mesh or if this is just supposed to be padding here, but I like the way that looks. And then before we get further into that, let's go ahead and talk about the face sculpt, which is my favorite part of this figure because they did a really good job capturing the eyes. I like that little dab of white really helps offset the black pupil. And then the blue iris looks nice. No problems there on the eyes. I love the big gaping holes, just like her original costume. I love the length of the bat ears here. That looks nice. I like this ruby red lipstick. Really pops on this very porcelain looking face here, which I like, you know, they didn't do too much detail to really make it kind of blah. I like how they just used just enough shading to show where the nose is. And then just a splash of white here to show where the teeth are. And then, of course, we have to have Barbara's flowing red hair. So as you saw on Detective Comics 359, how her hair flowed out of the back of her look there. It looks great here. And then I really like this belt. You know, it looks kind of like a metal plated, which really looks good. And then I like that the armor design here really flows throughout the legs, and you kind of get those neat little line details. And then, of course, as I was saying, the boots look very akin to her original look, which is, you know, they flip into bats here. And they loop around in the back. And then, of course, the whole armor look continues here, which I think looks good. You get more of that mesh. And, of course, here, more plating for her back. I like the way they did her gloves. You know, you get enough of the spikes here for her to punch. The yellow looks nice. I like the continuation of the line design on the inside. So that looks really good. And then I didn't notice this in the comics. I don't know if they just added this for snits and giggles, but this bat pendant here, if they added this later, let me know down in the comments, but I think that bat pendant looks really nice on the cowl. And I like how the cape here differentiates from the chest. And of course the really cool bat logo on the chest just looks really nice all around. So in terms of paint apps, as you can see, they're really clean. No problems there. And that's one of the primary reasons. Oh, and then, of course, can't forget to talk about the most important thing, the cape. I like that it's jet black, reflects, has a nice real reflectant design on it, has that sheer, so it looks nice in the light. And you flip around here and you get that yellow, which really helps make the character pop when you pose her like so, because you get enough of that flowing black here and then the yellow. Just for me personally, very, very nice sculpted figure. If you guys know who sculpted this, let me know down in the comments below, because I'd like to say bravo in terms of aesthetic. It looks really, really nice. So before we get into the articulation, I wanted to talk about the only accessory that Barbara comes with, which is this cool little grappling gun. And aesthetically, again, it looks really nice. I love the way that the handle looks. I like that they made sure that there's a trigger guard and a hammer. And then when you get closer on it, which I'll try to get a close-up here for you guys, you kind of get this spring-loaded design here on both sides of this grappling gun. And what's neat is, okay, so here's where you would rewind the cable. And then, of course, you get the hook here, which really looks really nice. Have all the little holes, so, you know, you can shoot it, and she can go swinging. And now, I've heard different reviewers talk about this figure, and they talk about how their rope is screwed up. Because what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to be able to put it in her hand, and it's supposed to shoot. And as you can see, you get a really nice range on how far that thing goes for photography reasons. Now, what I'm talking about is some people said that this little stopper is either crammed up in here so they can't rewind it. And I think some even said that this wasn't even on it, so just be careful when you're messing with this thing to be mindful of that, because what that is the stopper, and then you can use it to pull your grappling gun back to its normal place, so just don't pull too hard on it. Now, one last thing that I want to talk about with this grappling gun, because remember how I said this figure has certain problems? Now, the grappling hook, sadly, is one of them. So let me see if I can show you guys here on camera. So as you can see, Barbara has this open hand on this side. Now, the problem is you put the grappling gun here. Look at, of course, I can't get the focus for you guys. Look at how much bigger the handle is. So when you get it in there, you really have to be careful, and you have to really work it. Now, what scares me the most is this thumb right here bends when you're doing this. So I was going to have a PTSD moment and thought that that thumb was going to snap off. So when you're messing with the grappling gun, oh, be careful, 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 because if your thumb snaps or one of these fingers here on the trigger snaps, you're not going to have a good time. So that's, when it comes to the problems with this figure, the grappling gun is one of the major ones for me. Now, we're going to go ahead and go into the articulation here. And this kind of is where a lot of the problems start to rear their ugly head. Because, you know, a lot of the Legends figures and the newer Marvel character, or, you know, DC figures, you know, Barbara can look down about that much. She is on a ball joint, but, you know, with these newer figures, how they can look almost down. And then, of course, this hair thing. I wish these characters that have this bigger hair, I wish that they would do something, because, you know, you get a little bit of play, but you can't tilt her head at all. The only thing that you can kind of do is you can sort of get a little bit of a tilt, and about that much that way, and about that much that way. Arms do swivel 360, thankfully. They can, when they're in this position, go that way, and then if you twist the joint, you can get that good of a range of motion. She does have a 360 twist on both arms there. And then I'm thinking, because this is an older figure, which really kills me, single jointed elbows. It's like, oh, come on, man. And now she doesn't have a wrist swivel, but she does swivel at the glove, which is really cool, but I wish that they would have given her some wrist articulation, especially to move back and forth, which this character does not, which is another big problem with me. Now, she doesn't have no ab crunch whatsoever, so you can't twist the torso. You have to rely solely on the legs, which is, again, where another problem presents itself, because there's no upper thigh cut whatsoever up here. We do get a boot cut, so you can kind of twist the legs out. That's about the most that you get out of that. And now she can twist, she can kick that much forward and about that far back. Now, the saving grace is well, before we get into that, I've already talked about that. Okay, sorry, I sometimes have not had enough coffee and I tend to ramble. She's on this butterfly joint, so she can kind of get a good, at least good kicking range. So, you know, you can at least do that with the butterfly joint. And now for the legs, they can pivot up about that much up and about that much down, so not a whole lot of range there. So, even though this character is beautifully sculpted, comes with a really cool grappling hook, you know, so again, the aesthetics for me are 5 out of 5, but in terms of like the articulation, that's where this figure sadly falters. So that definitely gets like a 3 or 4 out of me, and I'm assuming it's because it's an old figure before they kind of figure out the mechanics of these older, newer, you know, Marvel Legends and DC Collectibles. And so for a size comparison, this is the DC designer Greg Capullo Batman from the New 52, and this is, I believe, the DC Essentials Nightwing. And as you can see here, they scale properly. If I'm not mistaken, I think Barbara's at about 6 1/4 inches, I think. Batman, I think, is about 6.5. Same with Dick Grayson, Nightwing here. And I thought it appropriate to do all three of these characters because when you look at, again, Detective Comics 359, you know, you have Robin, Dick Grayson when he was in his Robin uniform, and of course Batman in the background and Barbara in the foreground running, and it says the $1 million debut of Batgirl. So I thought it very apt to use these characters for the size comparison. So with your figures, you're not going to have any type of scaling problems, y'all. You know, it's one thing I will appreciate about the Designer series, the Essential series, the Collectible series, and the Mattel DC Multiverse. The newer ones, the McFarlane ones, they're 7 inches or so tall. So you're really kind of getting into the iffy range there. But for these essentially older ones, they're going to look great when you display them for toy photography or putting them on your shelf or what have you. They're going to look absolutely beautiful. And this character, even though she does have some problems, it's something that you're really going to add because this just looks so great together. So overall, guys, I think this is an absolutely beautiful figure and definitely one you're going to want to add to your collection. Aesthetically, this thing is sculpted and painted very nicely, and as you can see, very little to no real problems with the paint apps. And it's clean overall. It looks like Barbara Gordon, and you know, I'm sure that there's a classic Batgirl figure out there. I have not seen her yet. If you guys have, let me know down in the comments. But for the time being, you know, to kind of have more of an updated but still classic looking Batgirl, this is the one that you're going to be happy with. Now, I did look at Big Bad Toy Store in Megapolis. She's not in stock there, but I did find this one, I believe it was, on Amazon. So you can either check Amazon or eBay, or check with your local comic shop and see if they can order her for you. If so, you know, I hope so, fingers crossed. Because, again, beautiful figure, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on her. So as I said at the beginning, if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe, and hit that fancy little Batgirl bell next to subscribe, it helps us out a lot, especially since we had to restart the channel, which sucks. And all the figure reviews that I've done, I'll make sure to get those all re-uploaded. And in the meantime, if you wouldn't mind sticking around towards the end of the video for this figure, I'll have a photo slideshow and, you know, of all really cool poses with Babs here, and it's going to look absolutely beautiful. So with all that said, I hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.